Greetings, welcome to the Power of Purpose with me, Anton NM. Today I want to share with you an insight, very important. Of recent, I have noticed that there is drifting in terms of moral behavior, there's drifting in terms of definitions of what certain concept means. There is a revolution coming in terms of language. And when the language changes, behavior change, because every time you want to alter a behavior, you want to adjust and change, it comes with the language changes. There has been a language of illicit based on humanism or human worldview or humanistic worldview, philosophical. It's kind of a new age knowledge. And the knowledge is drifting around, moving around and drifting people because the concept sounds so very convincing. You would say a noble lie, a lie that is noble, that everybody kind of believe in and say this is it, but it's a noble lie. It's a lie that looks noble. And the concept I want to discuss with you today is a concept of self-love. Self-love. I've seen this definition moving around and has shifted people in all walks of life because of misunderstanding of this term self-love. People have engaged in unthinkable behaviors. People have engaged in all manner of unthinkable, because when you speak of self-love in a humanistic or humanism worldview, you are talking about self, pleasure, joy, peace, power, anything that is of you, that centers on you. The danger to it that I want to illustrate today is humanism of self-love often drifts towards self-worship, worshipping of self, pleasing of self, converted into worshipping of self. Now this is how it goes. So people have been able to do unthinkable things in the name of self-love. I can sleep with whoever I want, I can drink alcohol, I can get into drugs because it's just me. I want to be happy. It's me. Divorce, family disruption, all kind of chaos because it's me. And it has drifted into self-worship. What is the view of God on self-love? What is the perspective of God on self-love? There is no self-love in God. There is no self-love. There is no scripture. There is no theological foundation on self-love. So let's take the only scripture that a little bit and not direct, indirect speaks about self-love. It's Matthew 22, you are reading from verse 37. Love the Lord your God with all your soul, all your mind, all your heart. And love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor the way you love yourself. So in that, the question is then, how do I learn how to love myself when the loving of self is attached to the greatest commandment? And the pivotal, the vital aspect of it is loving God with all your heart. What is it saying to you? What is it saying to me? If the basis of love is loving God with all your soul, all your strength, all your spirit, all your heart, all your mind, if that is the basis, to verse 37 to 40, love the Lord your God with all your soul, all your heart, all your mind, all your strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That is the only indirect definition or way of loving yourself. And It's beneath is the number 3. The number 1 is loving God. The second is loving your neighbor, and then love your neighbor the way you love yourself. It's in that angle. So, what is it saying? What does it mean in God's perspective to love yourself? This is my understanding. To love yourself in God's perspective is to love God. It's not the pleasure of materialism, of promiscuity, of alcohol, drugs, and jumping around in the name of loving yourself. No. In the definition of God, loving yourself means loving God. How does loving God relate to loving yourself? You are a spiritual being made in the image of God. Your soul is made from God. Understand that. You are born from God, and the only way you'll be able to understand who you are and understand yourself is by loving God. God becomes your mirror. I look into God. I love more God. That reflection of loving the mirror before me, which is God, it reflects back to me joy, peace, love, kindness, all kind of thing. So I would tell you today, the only method to God of loving yourself is loving God. Because the more I love God, that is me, is the source of me. The more I love Him, the more He pours into me love, peace, joy, that which will overflow to loving my neighbor. When we sinned, fell out of love, fell into darkness, there was no love in me. It had to take, for God so loved the world, me, that He gave His only begotten Son. So by Jesus dying and loving me, when I receive Jesus, I receive the love of God. For God is love. When I receive Him, Jesus, I receive the love of God. Therefore, that love, I'm now projecting it to others. Loving my neighbor bases on the love I received. They that have not received God are empty, because God is love. When I receive Christ, I received love. And that is the love I'm going to use now to love my neighbor. Contrary to the popular belief, loving yourself in God's definition is loving God. The more you love God, the more the reflection of God, the more the echoes of love of God pours into you. What does it mean to love God? All my actions, my attitude, my meditation, the words of my mouth should reflect in His glory. Whether I'm serving the next person, I'm serving my children, my family, that should be an expression of loving God. As a result, joy comes to me. As a result, peace comes to me. As a result, prosperity, blessings comes to me. Don't ever listen to anybody telling you the other definition of loving yourself. It will lead to lusting yourself and worshiping yourself. And it leads to death. The only true definition of loving yourself, according to God, is loving God. As you love God, His love is reflected abroad into you, and you're able to project that. If you want to love yourself, spend more time with your source, your creator. That is how you love yourself. Because if you spend more time with your source of life, which is God, what comes out of that source is able to bring fulfillment to you. If you're going to love yourself by being away out of His presence, you are now dying. Because where you go as a form of loving yourself, it's actually away from the life itself, from the love itself, which is God. The best way you can love yourself is through loving God. And when you love God, He projects into you His love, the fruits of the Spirit, kindness, joy, power, purpose. You discover who you are in Him. You discover your joy in Him. You discover your fulfillment in Him. These end times, you have so many humanistic of self-worship as a definition of loving yourself. How many people have destroyed their lives, their marriages, because of selfish, individualistic, in the name of loving yourself? Go back to God. Loving God is the best way to love yourself. He's gonna pour into you His love, His grace, His blessing, His joy, not worldview. And that is what the love you're gonna use to love your neighbor. What an awesome discussion. We are gonna get into more details in the part 2. For now, enjoy and think about that.